justice for their 17-year-old son.
Sion Carroll vanished from his home in November, and days later his body was found in a shallow grave in Kinbridge.
Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022, 17-year-old Sion Carroll went missing for 10 days before his dismembered body was found in a shallow grave. Both arms and both legs had been removed, and he had a lot of chop wounds, from what they suspect had come from when the perpetrators were trying to dismember his body. Sion was last seen at his grandmother's house near Center Street, which is where his body had been found. Sion had been living with his grandmother for 4 months due to him getting into trouble back at home with his mother. Around 8 p.m., the night of his disappearance, Sion and his grandmother had gotten into an argument over clothing being on the floor. An hour later, Sion came to his grandmother, apologized, and said he was going outside for a walk, which was something he had always done when he wanted to smoke. Sometime while Sion was outside, his grandmother fell asleep, but when she got up the next morning, her grandson was nowhere to be found. So she brushed it off and went to work, figuring Sion was in a rush and had just went to school without saying goodbye. However, when she came back home and realized he was still missing, she knew something was up. When she called the school, they too had not seen Sion. Word quickly began to spread amongst family and friends that Sion had gone missing, and when some boys in the neighborhood were asked about when they had last seen Sion, they said that he was out in a shed with some boys, a shed that had caught fire and destroyed virtually everything inside of it. It had been almost a week since Sion had gone missing, and as family and friends searched for answers, they realized that Sion had an iPhone, and while it did not have service, they were able to ping it, and shockingly, it pinged near a Tier 3 sex offender's house. When this information was brought to the police, they stated that the person living in that house was not a sex offender, and he was put on the sex offender registry by accident. The family considered this to be strange considering he had been on the list for months, but days after Sion's family brought this to their attention, this person's name mysteriously disappeared off of the registry. Fearing the authorities were hiding something, the family took matters into their own hands and visited the home of the alleged offender. After knocking for some time, they were greeted, not by the person living in the home, but by police who had showed up and ordered them to vacate the property. Sion's family did not let that deter them. They hit the pavement, interviewing neighbors, and one of those neighbors revealed that days prior to Sion going missing, her daughter had been sitting on the back porch when she heard someone in the woods screaming for help. She called the police, but no one showed up. 10 days after he had been missing, around 3:30 in the morning, Police Chief Ben Barnes, whom the family had spoken to on numerous occasions. The same police chief who told the family that Sion's body would be found in the woods. The same police chief who told Sion's mother that her 17-year-old son had probably committed suicide due to the medication he was on. This was the same police chief who had been driving around outside of what would have been his jurisdiction when he made the gruesome discovery of Sion's battered body.
His cause of death was a gunshot wound to his head and his spine. He was then dismembered. Lye was poured on him and cement, and then he was buried in a shallow grave.
Family questioning who would do this to a teenager and why.
Whatever occurred, he didn't deserve that. He was only 17. And then to have no answers behind it is just unexplainable.
Chief Barnes resigned from the police force on December 31st, 2022, almost 2 months after Sion had went missing. While some in the community saw this as suspicious, Barnes claimed he had already put in his resignation before Sion went missing. He also stated that he had searched several areas in the town of Kinbridge and Lunenburg County during the course of the investigation, and that it was an anonymous tip that led to the discovery of Sion's body at 3:30 a.m. What's even more interesting is that the police never interviewed Sion's grandmother, although she was the last person to see him alive.
At 6 tonight, Desiree Montiel spoke with Sion's mom about her ongoing mission to get justice for her son and to find his killer.
A nightmare.
The past year has been tough for Tiffany Baker as she continues to look for closure after her 17-year-old son, Sion Carroll, was murdered.
He was a good kid that just had life. It's been really hard for my kids and I. I guess because we're like forced to just deal with it
with no answers, no explanation.
Over the past year, Sion's family has been searching for answers, but so far no arrests have been made, no suspects mentioned.
Sion was a 17-year-old kid. He was a baby. He was a baby, and he didn't deserve that.
Virginia State Police tells us this is still an active case and encourages people with information to come forward.
My family and I have pretty much tried to exhaust all resources.
As the investigation continues, Sion's family is doing their part to raise awareness, even putting up this billboard along Mechanicsville Turnpike for a week with a goal to generate leads.
And I just wanted to make sure that Sion knows he's not forgotten. Like, I would never forget him.
A mission close to this mother's heart as she works to get justice for her son.
If you know something, say something, because it could one day be your kid. If you know something, say something. Don't let this continue to go on in your town without saying anything and just sweeping it under the rug, because I will get justice for my son.
8 News reporter Autumn Childress is live from State Police headquarters. And Autumn, you've been in contact with this family since the very beginning of this case. What can you tell us about the latest tonight?
Well, Eric, Deanna, we first brought you this heartbreaking story 1 year ago. Tonight, Sion Carroll's family fears his case may have gone cold, but they tell me their fight for justice has not stopped.
And it hurts. Let's think about it if it was one of yours.
Tonight, pain and questions remain for Junius Carter, 1 year after the gruesome murder of his grandson, Sion Carroll.
My family is still scrambling with his death.
Questioned who would have killed the 17-year-old and why. 1 year later, those same questions remain unanswered.
The town is so small, somebody down there knows something. They know something. And just let us know, let the family know.
Family now fearing Sion's case has gone cold. Earlier this year, the Kinbridge Police Department handed the case over to Virginia State Police. Investigators confirming tonight no one has been arrested.
We still haven't heard nothing.
No suspects?
No suspects, nope.
1 year later, a billboard honoring the teen sits along Mechanicsville Turnpike. The message, "We miss you, Sion." Carter telling me tonight it's a constant reminder of the tragedy that struck his family. But he says their fight for justice continues.
We're not stopping until we get justice for him and some of the other kids that's missing or that have been murdered.
What Sion's grandfather is referring to is the fact that within a 3-year time span, young black men have been mysteriously gone missing in Virginia and none of their cases have been solved. No leads. No suspects. Just unanswered questions. Brandon Lee, who was a friend of Sion's, reportedly unalived himself a day after Sion's body was found. Apparently, he left a note to his family telling them about what he had planned on doing. On that day, he had been running from police on foot when he ran into the woods and took his own life. Which is interesting, considering Chief Barnes had said the same thing about 17-year-old Sion. He took medication, went into the woods, and took his own life. Antonio Rich, a 19-year-old, the cousin of Brandon Lee, was shot 5 times, one of his hands had been broken and a part of his ear was missing. His body was discovered in a ditch in Kinbridge, and like the other victims, he too lived on Center Street at some point. Carlton Craig, another mysterious death that occurred in Victoria, Virginia, which isn't far from where the other victims' bodies had been found. A call came into the police station claiming Carlton had wounded himself in the head in an apparent suicide attempt, but when authorities arrived on scene, 6 people were in the house with Carlton as his lifeless body laid on scene, his pockets turned inside out. Days after, his mother found the same hoodie he had been wearing the day of his murder, washed clean, soaking wet in someone else's home, and yet no one has been arrested. Kenyell Lee, Brandon Lee's cousin, also went missing, but until this day, his body has never been recovered. According to his mother, police told her that her son was indeed deceased and that 2 people in Kinbridge know what happened to him. The officer promised to give her further details, but 2 years later, and she has yet to hear anything. Arthur Banks, another black man, was found hanging from a tree on June 12, 2021, by friends of his stepfather. His body located in the same field as Sion's. After police recovered Arthur's body, the family never received any information from the police, but when they received the autopsy report, his cause of death was listed as him having taken his own life. The issue of missing black men is a complex and deeply troubling problem that requires urgent attention. We must address the systemic racism and indifference towards black men in our society and demand that their lives are valued and protected just as much as any other individual. Yes, they are strong, but they are human, and as humans, we can all fall prey to the evil forces in this world. The media, law enforcement, and society as a whole must acknowledge and confront the biases and stereotypes that contribute to this issue and take meaningful action to ensure that missing black men are given the same level of concern and effort in finding them, as well as seeking justice for those whom have been murdered. We must bring attention to the missing black men in our communities. Rest in peace to all of the victims mentioned in this video. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and love one another.